Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Career Cloud by Give Specific. I'm one of your hosts, Agina Brown, and today we are joined by a fellow Wildcat, fellow FDSU alum. So I'm so excited to interview her today. We have Miss Shandréa Stallworth. Shandréa, what's up? How are you feeling?
I am feeling good. I'm happy to be here with you guys. I appreciate you guys reaching out to me. Kind of, it's like that. It's a little Black celebrity,
That's what you are. That's exactly
Look, I'm like, me? My side? Okay.
Well, I'm glad you feel special. We feel special to have you on the show. So,
thank you.
Yes. So to start, we're going to read some points from your biography, and then we will start with some questions and get the interview started.
All right.
Okay. Shandréa Stallworth is currently a fourth-year PhD candidate at Mississippi State University, where she studies weed science with a concentration in genetics. Shandréa is a three-time recipient of the Mississippi Space Grant Consortium Fellowship with NASA. She received her Master of Science degree from Auburn University in plant breeding and her Bachelor of Science from Fort Valley State University in Plant Science and Biotechnology. To learn more about Ms. Stallworth, please visit our website at getspecific.org. All right, Shandréa. So could you start by telling us what your journey was like to weed science? How did you decide that weed science was the path that you wanted to take?
So getting to weed science I wish I could say it was kind of like a linear path. It was more like this. When I got to Fort Valley, I actually started out pre-med. I knew I wanted to be a doctor, and it's kind of coming full circle. Like, I'm still going to be a doctor, but different. Mm-hmm. But I thought I wanted to work with patients. My mom's a nurse. I was like, I can do this. I've grown up around this. I got to college, I was like, I don't like this. It's a lot of science. And really for me, it was just a lot of the same science that I'd already been doing. It wasn't interesting to me. So then I kind of set out to find another major. And thankfully with Fort Valley, we had like those 12 unrestricted hours. So I got to go and take some intro classes. So they pulled me into plant science, telling me that I could go through a pharmacy school pipeline. So in my mind, I was getting ready to go, and it's like, okay, I'm about to change to pre-pharmacy. I'm gonna get this degree in plant science. It's the same thing. It's like, I'm trying to make this correlation, medicines come from plants, like the most natural basis. I can do this. I took my first plant science class and I fell in love. Like the whole biotechnology, just the whole manipulation of plants and how they really are the basis of life. I was like, I don't want to go and I think I want to stick with this. It was really, getting into the lab. We were doing things like making plants grow and making plants glow, so we could get them to show like green under a certain light. We got to do things like grow plants without soil. And I was like, this isn't boring. You know what I mean? Like when you get into, and I don't want to say it wasn't boring to me, because there's nothing boring about pharmacy, but it wasn't the same. It's a lot of chemistry in pharmacy. And I found that out the hard way. I like math, but not as much as you need to like math to get through chemistry. So I really enjoyed the hands-on aspect. After I graduated, I took some time off to really figure out what I wanted to do. I didn't want to waste my time and spend anybody else's money and not be sure about going to graduate school. I wanted to make sure, because it's an investment. I needed to make sure that I was ready for that. I ended up getting into the LSAT program at Auburn, and that was a part of that came from being in a program at Fort Valley. That kind of they have a bridge program that's very focused on diversity, of getting minority students from their bachelor's to their master's and then going on to get their PhD. So I did that program, and during my second year, I thought I was just going to get my master's, and I started getting recruited for my PhD, and I was like, I don't know what I'd get a PhD in. I've already done plant science. I've done the breeding. I like breeding, but it moves a little slow for me. So I settled on weed science. I thought that would be the next biggest umbrella to encompass everything. And now I'm here.
Well, we can tell that you love what you do. So could you tell us what you enjoy the most? What makes you the most excited about the work that you do?
Now what I'm most excited about is finally figuring out my career path. So a lot of times people think if you get your PhD, you're automatically going to be in a classroom or you're automatically doing research. My specific career path is putting me in place to actually work with students. So I was able to find out that I enjoy mentorship. I enjoy mentoring students and I enjoy getting them excited about science the same way that I was. I don't want students to have to waste, I don't want to say waste, but I spent a year not knowing, I was taking classes for a program that I didn't finish. And I always wonder, if someone had have exposed me to my lab experience, to the other side of plants, because I was that person that thought, it's farming. I'm going to be outside all the time. I don't like bugs. I got to get dirty. And that's just a small piece of what I do. So now I get to work with our undergraduate research program, and that allows me to be a mentor and be a teacher while also being a researcher. And that is exciting to be able to have that one-on-one experience and time with students to let them see this is what got me excited. And I hope that in sharing this with you, you'll start to, even if it's not in plant science or weed science, you'll explore the other side of science that you enjoy and find things that interest you.
I'm glad you mentioned teaching students, because I did read that you work with students in grades K through 12, with STEM programming. So can you express the importance of kids in grades K through 12 being exposed to these STEM programs earlier on? Do you think it has an impact on them later on in life, later in college? Can you just tell us if you think there's a big impact?
Absolutely. Just in the last couple of years with working with NASA and their K through 12 outreach, being able to hear and see little girls on the other side of the fence. So talking to them and saying, yeah, I'm getting ready to be a doctor and I work with plants. And they're like, you're a doctor? They have doctors for plants, and to just see that, I've always believed that to be what you want to be, you have to see it first. And in order for them to see it, I know that there aren't a lot of women out there like me. There are a ton of doctors, our medical doctors are blowing it up. But on the other side, I grew up shy, I really enjoy putting in my headphones and, kind of zoning out in the lab, and I don't have to talk to people. I enjoy talking to people, but my major allows me to spend more time kind of inside my head and figuring things out. And that's what I think is important about STEM as a whole. It gets your juices flowing. And it keeps you on your toes. And I think our next generation of philosophers, they need to be exposed to what they never thought they would see so that they can realize, like, okay, I'm going to go further. I enjoy hearing students say, I want to be like you. And I'm like, no, I want you to be better than me because I've already done this. So I need you to do something else. And they're like, you're right. You're right.
You did
so
your part. And
right.
changing, and furthering their experiences.
Absolutely. And like I said, it's the excitement. If I can just reach one person, I've done my job, and that's what I'm here for. That's the enjoyment for me, to see somebody say, hey, I like plants now. I might not be going into weed science, but they can go into medicinal plants. They can go into food science. We have chefs that have worked in a weed science lab, and now they have a different, outlook. They're like, I look at weeds differently. It's just so much to learn and explore.
Yes. So I heard you touch on it, but I know there are a lot of misconceptions around your industry. So could you please clarify what exactly weed science is?
Yes. So as a weed scientist, I actually work with crops. So I work with row crops like corn, cotton, soybean, and my specific specialty is rice. And I work with plants or weeds that like to mimic rice. and then they end up impacting the economic stability of the rice crop. So I always try to tell people, they're like, weed science. I'm like, not that kind of weed. While it is in the same category, that is not what I'm working on and what I'm focused on. I really want to feed the world. And in order to get the highest output from what we currently have, we have to make our crops better. And that's what I'm really focusing on at that really basic level.
Okay. Growing up, I always associated weeds with just going outside, pulling them, pulling weeds out of the sidewalk, growing up through the rocks and stuff. I always considered it as just a nuisance. I never considered the impact it has on our food supply. So it affects everyone. I never considered it in that way.
Right. And I tell people that my degree touches different aspects. I have to know about economics. I have to know about education, because that's one of the biggest issues that we face, is that because this weed mimics rice, it looks like rice. So if I don't educate a farmer on how to identify this weed in their field, then they come on the economic side and they spend 4 months waiting for this crop to come and, to produce. And then they bring it to me, and they're expecting to say, if we're talking about $1 for every pound of rice they bring me, if I have to take 10 cents off every time I find a weed seed, could you imagine me having to look at a farmer and say, hey, I can only give you 25 cents per pound? That can be heartbreaking, especially if you depend on your crop to feed your family and to make it through the winter months. And that is why there is a need for more people in the agricultural space, because it impacts economics. We need mathematicians, we need statisticians, we need computer engineers and people to do our modeling. It's not just what I do, it's so many things that go into it.
Speaking of all those different careers that you just named, could you tell us more about your fellowship with NASA?
Absolutely. So I don't want to give you the wrong dates, but essentially, NASA realized that they needed to increase their diversity, like everyone else. But they came out with a way to not only give back to graduate students, but also give us an opportunity to share the experiences that we have. So NASA formulated a program that allows them to help fund our research, while also allowing us to have the time to go out and interact with our communities. So they put a very high emphasis on minorities, so that whether that be woman, whether that be man, whether you are the only one in your field, if you've never met a person studying physiomatics, it's a space for you, because they want to be able to solve these problems. So they invest in our research to progress their Mars missions. And at the same time, in them investing in us, they expect us to reach back and invest in the community. So it's a great, they ask us to go to classrooms. We get to talk to students. We get to put together science projects. We get to give them tours around our lab. And with the investment from NASA, we get to invest in technology. So my lab has had the opportunity to do virtual reality videos for students, and they get to put on these headsets, and they haven't left their classroom, but they feel like they've walked through a field. They've seen herbicides applied. They can watch the effects of this. And that's a part of engaging students. We have to remember that they grew up with technology. So in order for us to pull them in and keep them excited about technology, we have to keep evolving at the same time.
Well, going back to what you said about just being able to reach one person, that provides you the opportunity to reach numerous,
Absolutely.
Being able to make such a big difference in their lives.
Absolutely. And I get to do things like this. This is time. I'd much rather do this and answer as many questions as I can. Again, it's all about the exposure and showing students that, hey, you can do this too. Look, it's somebody that looks like you. And if one person sees that, I remember that person for me was Mae Jemison. I wanted to go into space, and she was Black, and she was a Black woman, and she was a Black woman that was a doctor. How do I make this happen? And I remember writing about that in my application. I said, if you guys hadn't done that, I wouldn't have applied, because I was truly discouraged. I'm like, NASA, engineers, they want aerospace. And the next thing I know, through this fellowship, I'm seeing that NASA actually employs plant scientists. They want to grow plants on the space station and on Mars, and they want to know the impacts of climate change. Can we find plants that are able to survive these adverse conditions? I never knew. So had I not been exposed to STEM and, seeing women like Dr. Mae Jemison, I wouldn't be able to stand in this space and hope to be that same thing for somebody else.
Thank you for teaching me that, because I always only, NASA, I think space. That's all I think about when I hear NASA.
Absolutely.
I never associate plants or even other branches of science when I think about it. So to know that they're expanding and trying to get people in who are, in other areas of STEM, that's pretty cool.
Absolutely. And it includes the arts as well. When you think about it, we're sending people to space. We're isolating them in these capsules for days and weeks on end. We have to worry about their mental. And that comes from things like art. Are we creating the right atmosphere? Do they have the right music to listen to? Listening to different tonation. Again, people don't think about this, but this aspect we have to worry about are astronauts, and that's a part of NASA. They have to worry about the complete circle, and it blew my mind as well. I had no idea.
That's how I'm feeling right now. Like, what is something you wish you would have known before you got into this industry?
I wish I had have known how hard it would be. So a lot of people don't talk about, and we're getting more vocal about it, but at the same time that we're inhabiting these new spaces, we have to keep in mind that we're the only ones inhabiting these spaces. So there are a whole new set of rules that have to be followed. It seems like the spotlight is always on you. When if you're able to fade to black, that's not possible when you're the only one. So you're constantly setting a standard. You're constantly being watched. So if I had have known how to already balance the two, that's one of the questions. If I sit on a panel, if I can ask anyone, I ask, how do you manage your personal life and your professional life? Because that's something that's important to learn. It's one of those soft skills that I don't think we impress upon. But as we push students to be better, we also have to prepare them to be better in those spaces alone. And when I say alone, it's not that you don't have a support system, but there's a good chance that for 6 to 8 hours a day, you won't see anybody that looks like you. And that takes a different mindset. You have to be mentally strong. And it starts with early preparation. And that is, it's a make or break. But if the more you push that confidence, and if it's preached on, and if it's that positive reinforcement that, hey, you might be the only one here, but don't forget that you're supposed to be here. And if you constantly hear that coming up, it doesn't faze you when you get there and you're like, oh, I just realized I am the only one, you kind of make that shift from looking around and you're like, man, I'm the only one, to, okay,
right,
I'm the only one. Today they looking at me, what y'all need me to do? I gotta blow your mind. And it really, that's something that you learn if you have the right mentors and and the right support system, you get it a lot quicker. But if it was something that I could learn, say, coming out of high school, I'd be on it.
Yeah. I like that you said that, because I've always been told, no matter what space you're in, never tone yourself down to try to fit in a certain space. Be yourself, know that you belong, know that I am present and I am here and this is my space too.
Absolutely. I had a mentor, she told me, a mentor in soror, our first time meeting, she said, I was at a conference and I think you need to hear this. She said, you need to find your lane and you slay in your lane. She said, don't ever try to fit into anybody else's. You create your own niche. you figure out how to communicate with people so that they can understand what it is that you're bringing. And you get that ball, you swing and you hit it out of the park. And I was like, yes, ma'am. So that is the slay in your lane. And I said, I need to put that on a shirt. I need
I like that.
a vision board. It made sense. And I was like, okay, you're right. Absolutely
A lot of
right.
sense.
Yeah.
How has a failure or an apparent failure set you up for success later?
I would say that my passion that I have about connecting with minority students really came from my master's. My journey to get into my master's program, I'd actually applied and hadn't heard anything for a year. So I gave up the dream of going to graduate school. I was working full time. I said, okay, it's just not meant for me, you know? And then they called me maybe 3 weeks before classes started and said, hey, are you still interested in going to school here? And I'm like, yeah, you know, if I can afford it, like, that's the big question.
Right.
They sent me a scholarship application. I filled it out, sent it back ASAP, and then I hadn't heard anything. So when I finally they were like, oh, I'm calling like, hey, I need to know if I need to register for school. I don't want to register and have to pay them some money that I don't have. And they were like, nobody called you, told you that you had? And I'm like, no. So the week before classes, I'm emailing like, I need to get in this class. Do you still have space in this class? Are you here? Found a professor that let me into his class, emailing back and forth. He's like, you'll do fine. You've got these prerequisites. Great. I walked in his class. And again, it's one of those things where you know, being the only one in that space, I walk in, and mind you, I'm excited. I got on an ag shirt, book bag on. I walk up to him to introduce myself, like, hey, I'm the student. Because I think at this point, I'd missed the first day of class. I was like, I'm sorry, you know, I just want to introduce myself, let you know this is who. And he looked and are you in the right class? And it was like,
right. Excuse you?
When I tell you my spirit was so crushed, I was already questioning if I needed to be in school, and then for him to look at me and ask. But at the same time that happened, you got to appreciate younger professors, and that there's a need for us, because there was one in the classroom. He looked like a student. The other professor didn't realize he was still in there, and he turned and he said, what do you mean, is she in the right classroom? Don't you see her shirt? And, you know, I was like, this is like, you're talking about me? You can't, do I know you? You know, I'm like, have we met? I don't know who this knight is, but
yeah.
What he said. And when I tell you that it was discouraging, it scared me, it had me questioning everything. And when I say that I struggled in that class, my first exam in that class, I made a 47.5. And I can tell you what I made. I remember it. I remember what his handwriting looks like, because it had that much of an impact. And mind you, this was 2013. This was 7 years ago. And it's still like, I still remember how I felt. And I knew at that point that I had to keep going. There was I couldn't drop out. I knew that I needed to be what that other professor was to somebody else. If nothing else, that's what is important to me, because I never want anybody to feel how I felt. And it felt really good. Like I said, I failed the first exam, the second exam, I got a C, the third exam, I got a B. By the time I got to the final, I was like, this man's just gonna fail me off principle, because I'm struggling. I got an A on that final exam. I got a B in the class. I was like, I never want to see you again. But from that point on, I made sure to put myself in those uncomfortable positions. So somebody has to be, you know, the minority face on this diversity board. They have to be the early career representative who's also the minority and represent from two different spaces. If that's what I have to do, that's what I'm going to do, because I don't ever want anybody to experience that feeling that I did and not have done something to prevent that.
Oh, that situation sounds stressful. And and overwhelming, to say the least. So what do you do in those situations when you become overwhelmed? What do you do to get through it? How do you stay focused and get back on track?
Oh, it is all about the support system. It's all about the people that you surround yourself with. When I came to Mississippi State, um, I knew that in order for me to be able to make it here, I needed to have a different type of support system. It couldn't just be somebody picking up the phone, "Hey, Drea, how are you doing?" I begged my best friend, "Don't you want to get a PhD? Don't you want to go on this visit with me? I think we can find you a program. I mean, we're both in ag. I'm pretty sure they have money." I brought my best friend with me. And then, she made it through her program. She graduated in May. And now that's my motivation. Like, okay, she's gone. It's time for me to go. I'm chasing her now. I got to get out of here. It's also my support system within the university. I utilize the associate dean. I can knock on his door. I know his secretary. If there is a grievance, if I'm having an issue, if I feel like I'm struggling, he has that open door policy. The other minority professors on campus have opened their arms and their groups to me. So I'm struggling writing. They're like, "Hey, we meet 3 times a week at this time. You need to be there and we'll get this writing done." So it's always about the people that you surround yourself with. And again, you have to be uncomfortable to feel that growth. But if people have the time, there are a ton of people like me who want to give back. We're just waiting on somebody to ask us. And that's what it takes. It really does take somebody. It's not what you know, but who you know. And for us, we have to know both. And it's stressful, it's hard, but if you build that team and you keep those people around you, the sky's the limit. I mean, networking is the key in anything.
That's true. Like you said, it's not always what you know. Who you know can get you a long way.
Absolutely. It was networking that brought us together. If my post hadn't said Weed Science PhD, being in a group together, we'd never know. And look at us now. So it's all about, not being ashamed, not being afraid to put yourself out there.
Right. So to close, because we don't want to take too much time, what do you have any advice for students or individuals who are considering weed science as an industry?
Absolutely. With this industry, you can get into this door with a bachelor's degree. You can get into another door with a PhD. You can start with a company with your bachelor's, and they will pay for you to go higher and higher. All you have to do is do the work. You should never pay for an advanced degree. If you have put in the work and you're passionate about it, there's no reason for you to go into debt trying to be Dr. fill in the blank, because there are more than enough opportunities for students like us to do better. They want us there, and all we have to do, I hate to say it, but we have to prove that we deserve to be there. While everyone else doesn't have to prove it, we get in there and we knock it out the park. And that's all it takes. Don't be afraid of the no's. If it takes 10 no's to get 1 yes. And that 1 yes could open up 20 more doors than the 10 no's that you heard before. So don't be uncomfortable. Or no, I don't want to say don't be uncomfortable. Don't be afraid to be uncomfortable, because I'm very uncomfortable. But always be yourself. Always believe in yourself, and always, always, always take care of yourself. That is the most important part of any journey. If you're going to school, if you're going straight from school into industry, always take care of your mental health, because at the end of the day, that is all that you have to lean on. And I think that's it. That's
good. I will leave with just saying one thing. When you were talking about being comfortable, I heard a quote and I love it. And it says, comfort zones are where dreams go to die. When you're comfortable and you're complacent, you're not moving, you're stagnant. But when you get uncomfortable and you start working and, working through fears and all that kind of stuff, it's just incline.
It just, you push through. There's nothing else that can stop you. You are your biggest competition. And a lot of times we talk ourselves out of the greatest things. So be uncomfortable and And if you're too uncomfortable, find somebody that'll help you deal with that discomfort, because there are plenty of people who will push you. There are plenty of people who get that exhilaration from being able to help, to be able to say they don't want to be recognized in the front, but they like to sit back and say, I watched them do that. I had something to do with that. And that makes them feel good. And
Like
that's
Miss
important.
Shandréa Stallworth. Prime example. You are the prime example of that.
I just want to spread this. I need more of us in more of these spaces. So whatever I have to do to get them there, I'm going to do.
I feel you. We want to thank you. You have been such a joy to interview. Thank you for joining us, giving us your time, because I know you're busy.
I'm never too busy, and never too busy. It's always a two-way street here. So I'm going to use this some kind of way. And
right. Good. So to all of our viewers, we want to thank you. Thank you for watching us. Thank you for joining. Please follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. We are a nonprofit organization, so if you're able to donate, you can do that on paypal.com or patreon.com. We want to thank those who have donated to this organization. You are greatly appreciated. And we love hearing from you. We love the feedback that we're getting from you guys, letting us know you're watching, letting us know that you are gaining insight from these interviews. So that just encourages us to keep going. So come back for the next video. We are glad to have you. Thank you again, Shandréa, for this interview and sharing your expertise. So thank you.
No problem. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yes, ma'am. Have a good day.
Thank you.